Hey, everyone. Should start to see some names roll in. Courtney, Nicholas, how you doing? Nicholas, looking forward to talking tomorrow. Awesome. Erika, Rick, seen a few folks rolling in. So normally I would have, hey, Erika. Normally I'd have Kristina here. She is out this week, so it's just yours truly today. Which obviously just means more room for conversation with y'all and more back and forth. Uh, so yeah, excited to dive in with y'all and chat today. And we can obviously keep it as long or as short as we need to. But yeah, otherwise, excited to start answering questions. I thought to get things started, we could go through an email. It's actually going to go out through the Sales Hacker newsletter tomorrow, but it's the one email, two takes that normally I do with Kristina. It's a solo episode this week, but it was an email that I worked on with a rep at another company. And so I thought it'd be a good place for us to start to give the conversation some context. So I'll share my screen and we can go through it. So this is a rep also selling in the sales tech space. And so let me try to pull up the chat here. That way, at least, just since I'm hosting solo, I'll at least have the chat open if y'all have questions as I go through it. So this is someone else in the sales tech space. This was an email that they were sending out to head of revenue operations at quote account name. I kind of blanked it out here. So I'll read through it and then I'll give some feedback and then I'll show you how I rewrote it for, just so everybody can get some context on how to improve this type of message. So, hi, first name, saw that you're leading the global revenue operations at company, and company just released its cloud native platform. Also notice there's been a 38% increase in, yes, very dense, in sales job openings in the past year. Congrats on the growth. With being a leader in the DaaS space, where customers are able to easily build and scale their data use cases, not sure if these initiatives are important to you, but curious to know. Bullet point one, how are you getting insight into what features, analytics the market is needing now or in the next 6 to 18 months? How often are account name and account name showing up in deals, presumably competitor accounts? How are you tracking your sales team's ability to position company name to free growth in enterprise accounts? Just trying to connect the dots here, but yes, very long. But if account name is continuing to grow, I'm assuming there's a broader initiative to uncover the unfiltered voice of your customer to get a 360-degree view. Sorry, I can't help but laugh reading that. Into your revenue impacting data so you can accelerate growth and drive more revenue. Would you be interested in a purely educational conversation to learn about my company? Thanks again, sales rep. So you guys kind of called out a few things, right? Very dense, very long. Yeah, it's no surprise. It's written at a 12th grade reading level. Most emails that are written at this level of complexity get very little response. The other thing that like stood out to me is this person did a lot of research, right? Like saw you had this job title. We might cut that one, right? But they're releasing a new cloud native platform. There's been this increase in job openings, like they calculate it down to a percentage. So like the personalization is there, right? The challenge though is when somebody first reads this, right? When you think about how people read email, there's going to be a huge drop off. Well, let me backtrack. The average amount of time that someone's going to spend reading your email is 11 seconds. And obviously, this expands past that 11-second window, right? Doesn't take rocket science to figure that one out. But what's interesting about that 11-second average is the distribution of it. So we see a massive drop off after about 3 seconds of reading time. And what's happening there is people open the email and they kind of ask themselves, what is this? Right. And if it's this long and this dense, the response back is, oh, that's a lot of work. And it's also this like categorization of, wow, this is likely a canned spam email, right? Especially with the, saw you have X title at X company, right? And so they're probably not going to give it the time of day after that 3-second moment. So that's like a huge place where this is falling flat. But even if they did give it the time of day, what we're going to see is like, they're not going to be able to capture all this information, right? If 11 seconds is the average reading time, we won't really see like reply rates truly fall off until about 70, 75 words. So 30 seconds of reading time. You still, there's so much to capture, so much to try to grab in there. Like there's a whole like discovery call like mixed in within this middle paragraph here that is holding back the reader from understanding what it is that you're reaching out about, why, and how you can help. So, not to mention that like this is terribly optimized for a mobile phone. That was like one thing that came to my mind as well. So few things wrong with it, right? Like it's clearly personalized. This person's clearly being thoughtful about the account on the other end, which I appreciate, but there's smarter ways to go about it. So I did a quick rewrite. I didn't have a subject line for the first one, so I just put in a new one, right? Cloud native messaging. Given they're launching a cloud native platform, makes sense to do cloud native messaging as the subject line, right? Because it's probably something that they're thinking about, particularly as they're growing the sales team, particularly as they're testing new messages. So cloud native messaging, first name, I saw you just released a new cloud native platform. Is that why you've got so many sales roles open? Question mark. As you're pushing that new product, I imagine it would be helpful to know how those conversations are going. Our company can help with this. Case study company was surprised when we uncovered some unexpected competitors and objections. They told us they were able to pivot messaging much quicker as a result. Think something like this could help. Sales rep, right? I said all the same things, but it's much lighter. When I first read it, I almost wanted to like break each of the points of personalization into their own like emails, right? But I wanted to stay true to the original. And so I was like, okay, I actually can use the sales role opening as a nice transition. So this is something that I think is super key when we're personalizing an email. I actually posted about on LinkedIn today, which is, you make this observation, right? And you've got to transition it into something that's relevant and matters to your end user, the reader, right? As well as like something that like speaks back to what you do, right? Because if I just come in and I say, hey, Will, I saw you run RevOps. Here's something that we provide that's relevant to people in RevOps. There's this like logic gap where as the reader, I have to try to figure out what about me you assumed to get to the conclusion that this would be relevant to me, which requires a lot of translation on the end user to come back and try to figure out. So this is how I like to rate my personalization, which is like an observation and then tie it back into the main message, because that transition really makes it easier on the reader to understand the logic behind why I'm showing up. It's a real reason for reaching out. So that's why I use that. Is that why you've got so many sales roles open? One, it's an extra layer of personalization that like I couldn't have sent to somebody else, even though I kind of could. But two, it really ties back into pushing a new product, right? So like sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3, the start of sentence 3 at least, like we're really just transitioning from observation back into a problem and what we can do to provide a solution to that problem. The case study at the bottom, that's really just to showcase a level of credibility, you could probably word that a number of different ways. Our company can help with this. Then you could say, I know that because we met X company at a very similar point, period. They uncovered unexpected competitors and objections in their sales calls using our technology. They told us they were able to pivot messaging much quicker as a result. Slightly different phrasing, but same thing you're getting across, right? Is a level of credibility that says like, okay, I've done all this research into you. Now I'm going to point to a case that it's like hyper specific back to what it is that you're going through and how we can help. Makes it much more concrete for the reader. And then finishing it up very simply with think this could help is just an easy way to get a response. It's think this could help. Would this be useful? The long CTA becomes a lot to read through. And so if you're thinking about that, it's a lot for them to process, in which case it's a lot for them to respond to. And if it's a lot, then you're going to get a little back. So hopefully this is helpful. I can keep it up on the screen. But I thought this would be a fun way to just sort of like kickstart the conversation and start the back and forth. Does anyone have any questions before I unshare my screen? And then we can just start to jump into what y'all have got going on. I think you have to like raise your hand. I usually have Kristina take charge on this. So I've got the participant screen up and running. All right, don't everybody jump at once. Cool. Erika, I know you've jumped into a new role. Is there anything that you're working on as far as emails go? Oh, wait, I think I've got attendee hands. No, I don't see any anyways. Anyone? Well, Erika, if you want, you can come off mute. Let me do that real quick. Hold on. Okay. Figured it out.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Erika, how you doing?
Good. Yeah. So in my new role, I'm really spending a lot of time testing and figuring out exactly who our ICP is. So I'm spending a lot of time wondering if my messaging is just not going to the right person, or if it's if it's bad. So
Sure. Trying to figure out who the right person is always an interesting challenge. Kind of figured that out in our own sort of way. Curious, how are you going about it today?
we're testing and talking to anybody that's willing to speak with us and getting opinions from the people that do bite. So that's kind of the guidance my current bosses have given me as to like what we're wanting to do is really, because it's a super new product, so we're having to test out like what they find valuable anyways.
Yeah.
So,
Are you using a lot of the same like value prop messaging? Have you tried like, are you giving it slight nuance to be more specific to the role?
I am I'm not specifying towards the role. Well, actually I am, because like I have one sequence for like enterprise architects and another sequence where it's going to the CFOs. And whenever I'm talking to the CFOs, of course, I talk a little bit more numbers, like a return on investment. Whereas whenever it's talking to the enterprise architects, I'm talking more about how I can make their job easier.
Which makes sense, right? You're speaking more towards like their to-do list and what's going on there.
Right, exactly.
Um, so is there anything that you found particularly helpful as you've gone through that exercise?
I mean, I'm only about a week and a half in. So I started in December part-time, but then
Yeah,
I started full-time and I really didn't gain any traction in December. But
which
I've
that
booked a
happens.
couple, yeah, I booked a couple meetings last week though. So things are looking a little bit sunnier.
Oh, good. Good, good, good. Congrats.
Thanks.
Um, that's cool. So have you noticed that any particular um, profiles are connecting at a higher rate?
No, not yet. I,
Gotcha.
it's the main thing I've noticed is that smaller companies are more willing to talk to us, which makes, sense. And that was kind of what the struggle was in December, is because they had me reaching out to like billion-dollar companies,
Right.
and those guys are a lot busier than, you know, companies
Yes,
that
they
only
are.
have like 200 people.
Well, especially with those bigger companies too, there's a couple of things going on. One is they get like inundated with templated copy. And so you have to do like a ton of work to really make sure you stand out.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one is they're really busy. So like the bigger the company, the more meetings they typically have on their calendar. And so the
Mm-hmm.
harder it is to get in there and like actually kickstart a conversation. And one of the things that I've always found particularly helpful, this might just be how our product is based, is starting on the lower rungs, like having conversations with like end users
Mm-hmm.
um, before moving up to like a VP of sales, for example. Having conversations with SDRs internally at the company to give me a differentiated point of opinion.
Yeah.
Is that something that would be applicable for what you're doing?
Yeah, for the most part. I think that that's what I'm attempting to do with the enterprise architects versus the like CIOs and CFOs. Um, but I could see if there's anybody like even lower than them that would use our product and see it and get just have a conversation, because that's really what we need right at this point in the
Yeah.
business, is more conversations around the product.
Yeah, one of the things that we leaned on early too. So like, we started with a very one-to-one platform where like it was helpful for an individual rep, but we hadn't built anything for teams yet.
Mhm.
And one of the things that was super useful for us was reaching out just to get feedback. So we'd be like, "Hey, Erica, um, yeah, uh, take it like a typical cold email, right? Saw the following thing about you, tie it into a potential problem, but then instead of like trying to position it as a solution, position it as like we're trying to build something to help with that. If it's something that you are dealing with, would you be open to giving us some feedback as we build?" Which, might come across as like, yeah, we're a small company coming up to a big company. But what we've found in our experience when we use that approach is people are actually much more open to the conversation. And after the conversation, since they're much more open to it, it's much more, likely that they want to move forward, which is an interesting byproduct.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that. I did try to start last month. I started a campaign where it was just saying like, hey, we're building this product, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. Um, but that one tanked. But
Yeah. Um,
it's all about testing. And also I
Always.
tested that on CIOs, which probably
Right.
was not the person to
Yeah, you
ask
want to,
for that help.
I was gonna say, especially during December when it's like end of year for them.
Hmm.
But if you're going a little bit lower within the company, you can use that also to like garner some account info, some like feedback on how things work within the organization.
I
Um,
can
as
definitely
Nicholas
see
put
that.
in the, as Nicholas put in the chat, which is like figuring out like who the influencers are within the organization. People are surprisingly open to tell you, being like, "Oh, yeah, if you ever want to get anything done, though, you're gonna have to go through, you know, Erika, for example."
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
No, that's great. Thank you.
yeah, of course. Well, and I'm always happy to be, a resource, of course.
Yeah. I
Uh,
appreciate it.
well, cool. Um, I appreciate you jumping on, breaking the silence.
You're welcome.
Cool, awesome. Well, feel free to go back on mute. I can do that here. Cool, awesome. Thanks, Erica. Anyone else have any other questions? I mean, we can always just hang out in silence, but the point of these office hours is if you're working on something and you want to talk through it live, we can do that. Yeah, Courtney. Definitely down to check out that DM, Nicholas. But Courtney, let me find you on the list here. I've got 2 Courtney Spencers, which I'm not sure if that's one of the same. I'll click one and we'll find out. Courtney? All right, maybe I'll try the other one. Hey, Courtney.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good, good. Cool. So you've got an email for us?
I have 2. They're in a Google Doc. If I just share the link with you.
That works. Cool. Do you mind turning on visibility for just anyone? That way I can pull it up for everyone. Awesome.
I think it is. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so walk me through this. I'm sharing my screen so everybody can see.
Okay. So I prospect into a number of different kind of profiles, if you will. Some of them are in finance, some of them are HRIS, some of them are just HR, some payroll. It's kind of a variety. So this first email up here, I took out company names, obviously. And this first email is usually what I send after I call, but they don't answer.
Okay. Is that your first touch? You typically call and then leave them a email?
Yeah, depending on the situation, because if they've reached out to me, I usually just send an email first because that's the quickest way for them to respond. And then anything that's highlighted in yellow is something that changes based on what role they're in.
Okay. So that's like the and or kind of thing. So it's like you're going to do accounts payable or you're going to do maintaining a single source of financial truth.
Well, those are just that's because it's somebody that was in a finance role. So I might change those 2 quote unquote challenges if they were in HR or payroll. Yeah.
Got it. So there's a couple of things that are standing out. First is like the top, and then the second would be the bottom. So with these roles, are you finding that there's not much to personalize on?
I'm finding that it's more just difficult to find things specific to the company.
Okay.
And even if I do find something specific to the company, it still hasn't really done that much better.
Yeah. So there's something that Kristina taught me, and it helps build credibility in that first line. Because the problem with this first line is I'm reading it. Do you face challenges with accounts payable automation or maintaining a single source of financial truth? It lacks some context, but it also, that's what I'm looking for here. Yeah, it just has that feel that it could have gone to anyone, and I just happened to be the person at the other end.
Yeah.
So what's happening here is like the lens in which it's being thought through. I talked about this inbox triage, right? And people aren't really reading what it is that you have to say. It's really just a categorization opportunity. So like they open the email and they're like, oh, okay, this is some note that came from marketing. What is it that this person sells is like the next piece of what they're trying to figure out. And the next bit of that is, how do I translate that back to what it is that I'm working on, right? So accounts payable automation is a little bit more concrete. Single source of financial truth is a little fluffy, right? Where I'm not necessarily sure what that means. And that's okay, right? It needs to have a more task item specific phrasing. So it's like a single place to, track accounts receivable, as opposed to, financial truth, which is a little bit more vague.
Okay.
The way that I would probably go about starting something like this, instead of saying like, are you facing the following challenges, is approaching it from, because what happens here when like someone reads that message, like, yes, they categorize as marketing, but like you're not really opening them up to have that conversation. What really happens in this scenario is, that's what I'm looking for, kind of call the baby ugly, right? You're asking them to be like, you're right, I am struggling with this. I suck at, accounts payable automation. And that's not necessarily something you want to like kickstart the relationship with. So a phrasing that Kristina has taught me that's really effective is, hey, Courtney, from talking with other, finance leaders, from talking with other HR leaders, we've seen that accounts payable automation is a major pain. And then you can kick off the next line, which is like, I'm willing to bet that, you've had challenges in the past 6 months tracking, who's supposed to be paying you, right?
Right.
Just a simplified way, but I've also now like narrowed the focus to a single pain point, which gives me more at bats down the line, because now I can come back at a later date and use that single source of financial truth, use that, all encompassing analytics dashboard, hopefully repackaged and rephrased around some challenges that it solves for. But doing it in a way where like the way I talk about accounts payable automation kind of speaks to that bigger picture. The other piece to this note is you actually kind of buried the lead here. So I'm just seeing now, in the
Yeah.
second line, I just tried to give you a call. So you could actually lead with that and say, hey, Courtney just called. From my conversations with finance leaders, they're typically telling me that they're struggling with accounts payable. Notably, they don't have a sense for who needs to pay them, and the process is manual. Does that sound like something that you're dealing with currently? Then sort of giving feedback as I read, right?
Yeah.
The I was hoping to language, I would just cut it from the writing. And the reason is like, I was hoping to is very much so, like, of course you hope so.
Yeah.
You're trying to sell them something, right? So instead, like, I always like lean on personalization before I try to say like, I'm hoping to learn more about how you're doing the following thing. If you're hitting on a pain point, they're hoping to teach you, not necessarily, you having to pull for it.
Yeah.
As I'm talking through like how I'd rewrite this, the next line, actually, why don't I just do that? You mind if I just copy and paste this into?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Okay. And then I'll share this with all so you can track and follow along. Anyone with the link can come hang out. Okay, this will be a little easier. Okay, so hi, Courtney. Just called from conversations with finance leaders. They tend to tell me let's see, from conversations with finance leaders, I'm seeing that accounts receivable is a big pain. Particularly, I can't spell. Particularly, need lavender in here. Particularly, they're struggling to track who needs to pay, and then I'll start a new sentence to make it easier to scan. The follow-up process is terribly manual. This is a, let me just say we solve for this at your company. We built a how would you describe what it is that y'all offer? I see HCM system, but
yes,
capital management.
Yeah, so it's kind of all encompassing. But for AP automation, you could kind of just say we've built a automation system for companies like you to help alleviate some of the manual tedious process or something, and eliminate human error.
Cool. I'm going to simplify that down to just we've built an automated platform to help with this.
Perfect.
And then I literally just finished it up with, would this save you a headache or two going into tax season? Something that's like kind of timely.
Yeah.
W-2s come out later this month. So it's like, hey, this could probably save you a headache as you start to plan for tax season, which is in another way, like, I understand what time of year it is. This isn't just some blanket statement.
Random. Yeah.
But that said, this is still fairly, scalable. You can still use this in a lot of ways. But the rewrite here, the 15 minutes, I can't, Courtney, have your just like first calls ever lasted 15 minutes? I always ask a sales rep this because they rarely do.
I would say about 50% of my calls go anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
If they answer, and to be fair, it's likely not the first time I've called them. And when I say, do you have 15 minutes to chat about this? This is me, like, I'm going to open this up, and on that scheduled 15-minute calls, I'm going to include my AE.
Okay. Which makes sense if that's your process, right?
Yeah.
I think if that's your process and there's going to be a 15-minute call, the lighter first touch email makes even more sense. Because as someone who's been on the other end of those 15-minute calls, I can tell you I took the call with the amount of context that's typically provided. Then it's like, okay, like I kind of know why I'm here, you know, like I
Yeah.
know there's a platform, I know, you know, the following like problems I'm gonna have solved. So coming in lighter leaves more room for me to be interested and also to just like, you know, kickstart that discussion. Um, um, but you know, I actually do appreciate that you're not like just eating 30 minutes for the sake of eating 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That said, there's plenty of reps out there that do ask for 15 minutes and then immediately send a calendar invite for 30, which is why I asked the question.
Yeah, it really depends on like what they have available.
Yeah.
I'll ask them like after if they respond to that, I will ask them for a little more detail about what information that they're really going to need, and then say, okay, well, I think we can cover this in 15 minutes, or we might need 30, or we could do it in 20, and just kind of make it a little more customized there.
Yeah. Well, and I think once you get a response to an email like this, where you're asking just like a follow-up question here, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like it might save me a headache. Be like, great, I've got a few questions for you. I can obviously send them over email, but do you want to just have a quick 15-minute call to make sure that this is a good fit? And then we can schedule a demo after.
Yeah.
And they might want to just jump straight to a demo. They might just want to answer it via email, but you're giving them optionality, but you're still moving them through, you know, quote unquote, your process.
Right.
But it's another way to approach it.
Yeah.
Because like if you reach out to me, I actually prefer to just have a conversation over email. I'm like
A
that
lot of
person.
people do.
Yeah, I'm that person who'll just start asking questions back over email. And some people like that. Some people are just like, pick up the phone and call me. That'll be easier. So this like optionality is really useful as well. It's actually like if I ever send like a scheduling email, I try to give 3 options. So like I'll send my calendar link. I'll ask for their calendar link if it's better for them. And then I'll also propose like a time or two.
Yeah.
Well, cool. This was a good example to work through. So appreciate you sharing.
There's a second one on mine if you wanted to look at it.
Sure.
This is one that I personalized more, and it's kind of when I don't know who I should be contacting, if that makes sense.
Cool. Okay. I actually just had a call about a similar thread. This was a person selling into HR, bigger organization. Actually, they were selling into big organizations, but when they reached out to smaller organizations, they had trouble figuring out who the best person was to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had a whole cadence designed around getting a referral to the right person, which I was like, the challenge with that, right, is, yeah, particularly in the emails that he was showing me, was the context was very light. It was just kind of like, hey, Will, would such and such be a good person to talk to about marketing? Or you'd be like, hey, who's the best person to reach out to regarding marketing, right? Even less researched. If you're going to ask for a referral, I always propose that you should ask for a particular person. So at least way you're not just like blanket stating.
Yeah.
So give a quick overview here. So Blank is quite an inspiring company. I think you can cut that. Unless they're like solving world hunger, like it's not likely that they're that inspiring. No offense.
Yeah.
On your website, you talk about how Blank is there for your customers in critical times of change, highly important in a world full of changes. Also, on your website, you recognize your everyday heroes, people who are making a change in their communities, also an inspiring trait of your company. So, okay, and then I see how it transitions. I can't help but wonder who helps company manage valuable changes in your Workday environment. Workday, like the software, I imagine, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you actually have a really good nugget to start your email with, which is, they use Workday.
Mhm.
So I would start at something like this, be like, hey, Courtney, saw you're using Workday. Which is, it seems like a light way to start, but just
So
going with that observation, you're opening it back up towards what's really relevant and why you're there.
here's kind of my struggle by doing that. Specifically with people, so like Workday usually falls under two different categories of who's in charge of it. It's either going to go to IT or it's going to go to the specific user of said Workday module. So if they're on Workday Payroll, it could be IT or it could be Payroll in charge of that specific module. Same with HR, same with financials. So I kind of like, I don't want them to see, I saw you're using Workday, and they'll be like, oh, I have nothing to do with Workday. I just run my payroll process through it. However, we can manage their payroll process through Workday for the payroll team, if that makes sense.
Got it. So the specific task that they're in charge of happens to just go through Workday,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't actually happen to work in Workday.
I mean, they're yes and no. They work within the Workday environment, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that they are in control of building anything within Workday.
Yeah. So I think this is where the next sentence would come into play, which is like, are you using this to manage payroll? Would that be like the correct phrasing?
Yeah, that would be one of the options.
Yeah. And I'm asking these questions because it's like, would you be offering like a smarter, better way to do that? Is that kind of what I'm,
Yeah,
or
so
is it more that like it doesn't have like the correct tracking that you'd be looking for?
we can offer anything from managing payroll on the back end within a Workday environment. We can also, help them deploy Workday. We can help, with reporting, print checks, anything,
Yeah.
pretty much anything Workday related.
Yeah, which is perfect. You could even put this as a sentence. I imagine you're using this to manage payroll and insert other task item, right?
Yeah.
From talking with our Workday, I'd say from talking with our customers using Workday, it's a great comprehensive platform, but can be a lot to manage. And then you would just sort of offer up that you can take some of that burden out of managing the tool. It's
okay.
It's not like the sexiest email, but it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Which like I'm always happy to chat like one-on-one to work through exactly what it says, but I think I'm kind of getting at the point of what you're trying to get across.
Yeah.
You could always like pinpoint this down to like a specific thing, whether it's managing payroll or setting up dashboards. In which case, if it's like setting up dashboards, maybe you say like, from talking with our customers using Workday, they get a ton of value out of it, but they don't realize half the stuff that they're missing. Or our customers using Workday are always shocked to see all the things that they're missing in the product. this is something that we can help with. Would you be interested in a quick chat to learn about how we can help along with that?
Yeah.
Is that sort of the angle that you're trying to go for?
Yeah, it is. I just, I was trying to add in the personalization of tying it back into things that the company values. And so that's kind of maybe where I'm struggling with it a bit.
Got it. It's more on the personalization front. So the website quotes, it, like, the point of you using the website quote here is not necessarily to add value to the email. It's to sort of showcase to them that you looked at the website. Am I gathering that correctly?
Well, I'm also trying to like position us to kind of mirror their core values.
Yeah. I've found the values to value like mirroring doesn't really equate to success. It's just one of those things that people kind of see and they're like, cool.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't tie back to like something down here, you're going to struggle to solve their problem. The way I might include something like this, just because it's not as like task oriented and not as specifically tied back, is I might include it a little further down, where we help you get more out of Workday. And I might try to like either include it as like a PS or as like a like final note within the message. Just
Okay.
given your site, maybe use it as like a referral piece. So I would use given
your focus on people or community.
Yeah, I'm usually not stumped on like how to weave this in. It's just like so out there, particularly the website angle, just because like the other piece here, right, is like, Courtney, how involved are you in what's on the website?
Yeah.
So like there's this like disconnect between like the things I'm like focused on, and like we're a company of 4 people, and you could tell me that the website updated today and it would be news to me. I'd be like, oh, that's nice. And so like telling me about a story that's on the site is like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah.
Right? Which like it could be like a fun way to do like a referral email where it's like, given you're putting such a focus on like the everyday heroes in in your community, wanted to give a shout to the everyday hero in Workday, updating and making sure dashboards are up to date. Curious, like, are you the best person to talk to about optimizing your Workday for X?
Yeah.
That might be like a clever way to tie it in, but that wouldn't be like the email I open up with.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think this is like a couple emails in, but I wonder if you could even, for like specific job roles, say like payroll managers are the everyday hero, because without them, nobody gets paid or something.
Yeah. Yeah. You could start it off with, you could start off with, hey, Courtney, I was checking out the story on the website about the everyday heroes in communities. Curious, are you the, seems like kind of cheesy, but like it might work. Curious, are you the everyday hero at company name that's in charge of making sure payroll runs within Workday?
Yeah, I
I
like that a
say
lot.
hero because talking with HR and finance leaders, it's typically a big pain point. Yeah, this is something that we can help with. Curious if you're open for a conversation.
Yeah, I like that.
Yes, we got there. Awesome. Cool. Courtney, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, Nicholas, I know you had a DM. Do you want me to pull you off mute? And before I do, I'm going to answer Jessica's question. Nicholas, there you are. Cool. All right, Nicholas, you're good to go.
Go.
Well, actually, before that, I just said I was going to do something and then I forgot to do it. Jessica asked a question in the Q&A, which was, on LinkedIn, there's a lot of different advice from different folks on best practices, long emails versus short ones, amount of personalization, don't include the word help, etc. Any advice that almost never fails. Okay. My response question back was she referencing the Gong data specifically? And she said kind of, but also other LinkedIn influencers. So wanted to just offer a quick sort of download on this. Reason I asked about Gong data was because Gong published some research around follow-up emails where it was really mainly to combat the notion that you could follow up with any thoughts ? And get a reasonable positive response. And I happen to totally agree with this. Kind of ties back to some behavioral sciences where if you just say any thoughts, you're basically asking the other person to opt in to read the entire message below, as opposed to if you provide some extra context, really reusing what you said within the first message, you'll find that you have a higher rate of success because they are already opted in and it's more of an opted out kind of thing, right? It's like, hey, given you're growing the sales team, I thought this message would be relevant. Did you have any thoughts on my last email? Where you're giving them a reason to click through as opposed to just sort of any blanket statement of any thoughts. The flip side to that is our data, as well as SalesLoft's recent publishing of data, has shown that shorter cold emails are more effective. 25 to 50 words is the first trend that we spotted, and then SalesLoft has now confirmed that with their data. Point being is just people don't spend that much time reading an email. And so if you can get to the point in a short, quick manner, you're going to have a higher rate of success. The other piece around personalization, I'm curious who would ever sort of say it's a bad thing. The only thing that I think is bad is necessarily the type of personalization, which if you're looking at like how people tend to personalize, it's typically with something that might not be relevant. I like to start with like an observation and then tie that back to a potential problem that they might be seeing. That's my go-to. Okay, want to make sure I answered that question just because Jessica asked it a while ago. Nicholas, you have a LinkedIn DM. Let's jump into it.
Mine's a little bit simpler, Will. And what I'm seeing is a lot of people are just taking emails and like the new trend of like hyper personalized, really short emails and just throwing them in DMs. And I wanted to talk about it because I haven't heard anybody say anything about it. And I don't think they're the same atmosphere and they don't work as well. And I've been on the receiving end, not just literally like the pitch slap or, you get the connection request and they nail you with this horribly long 17 paragraph response. But what are your thoughts on that first DM to go and book business, kind of like the email? What are some of the etiquette that you would use or If we could just talk about
Yeah.
it.
I think there's one inherent difference between a product like LinkedIn and an inbox. And that's an inbox is a to-do list, right? Just happens to be a communication channel, but it's really where people manage a to-do list item. Whereas LinkedIn is social. And so when people kick off a relationship with a pitch, I think it's a terrible way to start. Um, I'm actually much more privy to like conversation starters, which if you're thinking through like how um, yeah, if I was gonna send you a cold email, I might explain that we have like a solution that can help, right?
Yeah.
We've built something that helps with the following thing. Whereas in like a LinkedIn DM, I might take an observation and then tie it back into like a question that implies that there might be a problem. So like I'm kicking off a conversation, expecting them to message back, and it might be that like nothing comes out of it. In which case, like if nothing comes out of that like back and forth, I actually just let it die. I don't push.
Yeah.
Um, so it'll be like, hey, Nicholas saw, I'll go with an example I used. I think I actually used this in my LinkedIn post today, which is like, I saw you were a VP of sales over at ADP, which is like an enterprise HR company.
Yep.
Um, and then I would just tie it back into a question that ties back into like their regular role. So like say they're working at Gusto now as a VP of sales. I would say, I imagine, there's been, quite an adjustment moving into a much more transactional um, sales approach at Gusto. Do you see that showing up anywhere particular, like emails? Question mark. Right, much more a conversation starter. Um, but I definitely think it has to be personalized. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's more conversational. Like if I was reaching out to you for the first time, which I think I did actually, is I was asking you something about email strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I'd rather talk about something we both are interested in, and then later on, so you can almost pull like a Justin Michaels. So how's that going for you?
Yeah,
But I'd rather do
yeah,
it later when I've earned their trust and respect enough to ask that tough question, or else you kind of just look like a jerk.
yeah. Well, they'd also like if I started a conversation with you and I let it go away, right? I don't push. All of a sudden, my next message is received much more warmly.
Yeah.
Um, where I can then come in and be like, "Hey, I was thinking about our conversation. Um, Curious, do you have anything in place for X?" Where you're kind of like um, you're doing some of the same things, but you've earned it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because like we still have quotas to hit, right? You can't just like befriend everybody on the internet and never ask them for anything, otherwise you won't hit your numbers.
Yeah.
Um, but it's taking that like extra week of time to actually make sure it goes through.
Goes back to pipeline, hey? Have enough deals on the in the horizon so you don't have all your eggs in one basket, hoping and
Yeah.
praying.
Well, and this is actually one of the really strong benefits of posting on LinkedIn, because if someone connects with you, you can immediately open up conversation. So like if somebody shoots me a LinkedIn connection request and they've got a nice title, or even if they don't have a nice title, I can open up the conversation with, hey, um, is it a stretch to assume that you connected with me for my email content? Question mark, right? It's an easy conversation starter that I can send to anyone.
Yeah, that's a good one.
um, yeah, they might not say anything. They might just want to lurk, but at least I'm showing that like I saw them.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, you bump them up in the algorithm too, so they'll be seeing your content going forward. So double-edged sword. Anytime you comment or DM, like if you say thank
Yeah.
you right away, that's why with social selling index, it actually has a score for relationships. And since you've shown a relationship, now you actually bump up in the algorithm, so they'll see more of your content. So it actually wins that way too.
I did not know that. That's cool. Like I'm a frequent poster, but not actually aware of what I'm doing.
Hey, I love your content, so whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. I will be there to watch.
I appreciate
Comment.
that. Well, Nicholas, any other questions for me? I realize we're at time. I do have like a couple minutes that I can answer any other like quick hits, like maybe like a question like Jessica's or something. But
That was good. Thank you.
yeah, of course. Of course, of course. Well, cool. If no one has any other questions, we can adjourn. But everyone, I enjoyed having y'all here. Appreciate y'all putting up with me being a solo host today. But thanks everyone.